And you would think that this guy wouldn't need to go on the defensive. Hey guys, MasakoX here. So right before the final confrontation of Dragon Ball Super, we're going to be talking about good old Jiren. Again. Lately there's been a lot of hate and controversy aimed squarely at this guy's glorious space alien booty, ever since we found out his backstory back in episode 127. After over 6 months of hype and build up for this character, the antagonist of this arc, we were actually going to find out the origins and backstory, finally, for this guy. What do we get? But what I really think about it, I think we'll get to that in a bit. But is all of this furore and annoyance really reasonable or even valid? Let's talk about that. I think it's safe to say at this point in Dragon Ball Super's timeline that we've reached a point of fatigue when it comes to the likes of Jiren. And the only thing that could have really negated that would have been a tremendous backstory, but that turned out to be naff. It wasn't as explosive as many fans would have hoped for. I personally thought it was okay, but that's not what we needed. We didn't need okay. One of my personal ideas for Jiren's backstory would have been to have something quite tragic, like he had a lot of potential, which Belmod says quite rightly in the current backstory, but his power was so mighty and unable to be controlled by the young boy that he would have accidentally destroyed his race and would have not known what to do. He'd have been cast out. He'd have been someone that no one would have touched. He would have been left alone for the longest time, and the only person that would have actually sought him solace and given him something to strive for would have been a wandering topo. He would have brought him in to the Pride Troopers, given him some purpose and identity. And when you think about it, a lot of things changed for Jiren as well after we found out the backstory. They really started to double down on the whole, really, strength is glorious, strength is absolute shtick. They made Jiren more like a jerk. So, is this Toei just basically pulling another Zamasu on us? Was it just too much effort for the writing staff on the whole? Well, if you actually watched the Tournament of Power relationship video I did a while back, we actually managed to partially answer that notion. I and my researcher buddy Haverock think that Toei has a plan. They might, without us knowing, know exactly what they're doing. We are supposed to not like Jiren because he's meant to be the main obstacle for our protagonists. The Tournament of Power itself, at least on the fighting aspect, they're not meant to be really bad guys. They're meant to be people that the gods of destruction in their universes trust well enough of the safety of the universe. If they had bad guys in there, they wouldn't take it seriously and just destroy everyone regardless of the rules. Besides, the Grand Priest and the Omni King could easily snuff them out if they just put one toe out of line, like we saw with Frost. So the next best thing that people could do is to try and create some sort of roadblock for Goku in order to unlock a new particular type of strength for the Saiyan. But we can't have someone that we like as well, because then we might want Goku to lose. So we need this roadblock to be someone that we don't like. The way in which Jiren wrecked Jeets for the longest time in the last few episodes kind of gave us the feeling that he's meant to be the pantomime villain. Like, I'm going to destroy the world and all the tournament or whatever, the bad things. So that means he gets us to all shout, boo at him. You're a bad guy. Goku, kick his booty. How dare that alien be so mean to one of the franchise's most beloved characters? So we managed to actually find a baddie, as it were, and the series on the whole could figuratively breathe a sigh of relief. But was he really a jerk to Vegeta though? Over the last few months, I've heard many arguments saying that, oh, Jiren's just one-dimensional. That is a very valid point to make, but I think there's something more to that. Yes, he may be focused on his goal no matter what the consequence, strength. But I think episode 128 is the best example of him actually saying one thing, but then meaning another. You see, the core of Jiren's character in the manga, and yes, some things change between the manga and the anime, but the core character elements still remain the same, is that despite of his fixation and desire for true strength and justice, he is still a very big protector of the weak, the meek, and unable to compete. He seems to be aware that strength is also something that can be considered as a double-edged sword, in that it can hurt others as well as protect them. That's why in the anime for the longest time, he just basically sat in the corner and tried not to do anything just to wait out the clock so he could go home. If you look through episodes 127 and 128 rather closely, you can see that Jiren takes no pride or enjoyment in those fights whatsoever. In fact, you could say he was even trying to commend Vegeta for his absolute strength. And in my mind, I think Jiren was rather torn about something. What to do with a problem like Vegeta? Do you eliminate the guy rather quickly? Or do you give him some time to shine and redeem himself and actually humor his Saiyan pride? And then make sure he goes out in a blaze of glory? A truly uncaring and malevolent creature would have not given a damn about consequence or virtue or values of other people. You'd have just knocked Vegeta out lickety-split. You could consider that someone like that might be an early day Frieza. Some people might argue that Vegeta's conduct with Jiren might have actually made the alien rather annoyed with the character, but I think there might be two reasons to that. Firstly, it's because Vegeta made him do something that was against his own moral code, and secondly, maybe Jiren was annoyed with himself because he actually managed to connect with Vegeta on some level. And I'm pretty sure that at one point, internally, he was asking the question, am I doing to this Saiyan that what that monster did to my family? But Masako, you're clearly overthinking this. This is Dragon Ball. Jiren's just a big tough guy. Just let Toriyama do his thing. Unsubscribed. Yeah, okay. You do have a valid point with that one. But let me present to you Exhibit A. Vegeta, the biggest tsundere in the whole series. A person who will rarely allow his sensitive side to come out of hiding, and considers other people who let their sensitive side out to be rather weak. But there is an affinity that he shares with Jiren, something pretty potent. He, like Jiren, lost his whole family to someone evil at a very young age. And they are both people that are trying to fight for the safety of their own universes. And they are two people who do not play well with others. A warrior, Jiren's own words. Okay, well what about the statement that Jiren just used the Pride Troopers to achieve his own goals? You know what, I don't buy that. No. And why I think this is because it's all down to the fact that Jiren, as I've talked about before, is someone who just wants to be by himself. Just so that means they don't get hurt and he doesn't cause anyone any pain at all. In saying that Jiren really does care about his fellow Pride Troopers. Like many characters that follow the same trope that Jiren's currently following, Batman, people actually with that kind of trope have a really big problem when it comes to self-loathing. If he's doing something remotely against his own moral code and ethics, something that Jiren has done a couple of times in this arc, he will punish himself extremely. For example, Toppo. When Toppo was eliminated from the Tournament of Power, Jiren felt disappointed in himself probably that he couldn't have protected his comrade, so was just like, Toppo, you're so pathetic. So he was just saying that, oh, well, it's not my problem. Yeah, no, he would have been kicking himself internally. And another reason why he might be annoyed with himself with the likes of Toppo is that maybe our favourite mustachioed fellow might be aware of his wish on the Super Dragon Balls and what it might be. Let's just jump to Toppo for a moment. Despite him actually losing himself to his godlike potential, he is still a decent person when he's not buff and purple. How does he know about Jiren's wish exactly? Well, I think he does know, and I don't think it was Belmod that told him about it. I think Jiren trusts Toppo enough to tell him personally. He told Toppo exactly what he would wish for, and Toppo would recognize that that gesture was a really remarkable and noble thing. It's not something you hear every day, Jiren telling you a deep secret. Speaking of the whole Batman-like trope, we need to remember who was the narrator of the backstory in episode 127. It was Belmod himself. This guy has been inside Jiren's head for so long. And yes, Jiren is perfectly aware that this clown's been knocking about his own personal thoughts, but that doesn't stop him from being affected by it in some way. What does Belmod want with Jiren? To be a disciple? To be a god of destruction in waiting? No, he just sees Jiren as a tool. End of. He has no intention for Jiren to break free and better himself, to become emotional. He just wants to feed the guy misery and pain, to keep him doubting himself, so that means he will be compliant with whatever Belmod wants. What good would Jiren be to him if he was happy? I don't think he was lying about Jiren's backstory per se, but I don't think we were getting the full story here. I think if Jiren had the means to actually explain his own origin story in his own words, unclouded by Belmod, it would actually ring differently. We would see a different Babby Jiren. Okay, so what has made all this situation with Jiren more disappointing? Well, it's down squarely to us, the fans, the YouTubers, myself. We kind of overinflated Jiren's hype because he's big and tough and will fight Goku. Therefore, he is the big bad. In a way, no one really promised us anything. And yes, I can pretty much guess the main reason that Toei came up with a character like this is to sell more toys. But when you actually look at it, Is his own story really bad? I don't want to be just going on and on about how I didn't like Jiren's backstory. Let's talk about some of the reasons why I did like Jiren's backstory. I really like the fact that young Jiren had a very complex childhood and had a lot on his plate. It makes him more of a complex character than ever before. He's just not a big brute anymore. He has issues. He has some kind of dimension. He has dealt with loss, helplessness, abandonment, and his solitude wasn't initially his own choice. This godlike alien had to deal with many issues and quandaries and trials and tribulations a lot of people have to suffer with all the time. In fact, the more that I think about this whole thing, I think that his backstory was a really big subversion and a great example of Toriyama throwing us for a loop. But having said that, I think it would have actually suited Jiren's personality even more so had the backstory not been restricted to just 2 minutes. Really get to know Jiren before all of this sorrow clouded his thoughts. The fact that Jiren had to deal with something quite mortal actually makes him a more relatable in our eyes, perhaps. Now, the last thing I want to discuss about Jiren today is his real weakness. There's been a lot of critiques, from yours truly as well, that the whole encounter between himself and Goku would end the really typical and boring way. The old hit him really hard routine. The true weakness of Jiren has been made known to us a very long time ago, back in the days of his confrontation with Hit in episode 111, and then with Vegeta, and then with Frieza, and then with 17, and now finally with Goku. What do all of these moments have in common? They're all sneak attacks. If you are in plain sight of Jiren and you are trying to attack him, you ain't gonna attack him. He's gonna see you coming and be able to counter it before you can even think about fighting him. But if he's not expecting an attack from that particular person or does not see an attack coming, he can be hurt. Yes, he may be able to take a 3-way beam struggle squarely in the face, but his super durability isn't a passive trait of his. He has to constantly think about it. So what better way to counter the Grey type with something truly unpredictable? Ultra Instinct. So let's sum this all up. I really think there needs to be some kind of improvement about Jiren's character arc. But I also think that any kind of hate or confusion or infamy about Jiren is really kinda undeserved. When you take some time to look at his backstory and overall composition from multiple perspectives, there is much more depth to him than you might have initially thought. But of course, everything now has to be wrapped up in 3 episodes, which puts Toei in a bit of a quandary. They can do one of 2 things: completely redeem his backstory, or completely negate it and destroy it. It's up to them at the end of the day, but I think one thing's for sure: the fight between Goku and Jiren is going to be rather spectacular. But I think the one thing I would have really wanted to see with Jiren is some of Toyotaro's ideas make the jump into the anime. That we actually get to have a better understanding about what he's like, because he's got a bit more dialogue than in the anime. He barely grunted for the longest time in the series, but in the manga, yeah, he was there. Had Jiren been more chatty, not a chatterbox, early on in the arc, I think we would have actually gotten to know him a little bit better than we actually did. Oh well, so what do you guys think? Do you think Jiren's been underdeveloped? What kind of traits would you have added to him? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!